So the time has come for me to continue my series of videos on shows I adore, and I couldn't see myself spend one more week without talking about hands down one of my favorite Thai series of all time, Theory of Love. I'm gonna be honest, I don't think the Theory of Love viewing experience I had in summer 2019 can ever be replicated in its utter perfection. First of all, everything is better when it's warm and you've got all of the time in the world on your hands. But more than that, Theory of Love introduced so much to me and Thai dramas in general. The beauty of Jumpo and Afghan, the importance of point of views, and also how to make a BL series stand out from all of the others. Also, little disclaimer, I won't be talking about the special episode that was released in 2020, though you can assume that a lot of points I make today can apply to it too. I do have a full video of my opinion on it if you're interested though. Okay, let's start. Theory of Love's concept is very simple. Third is in love with his fuckboy best friend Kai. This already delivers on one promise, which is the friends to lovers trope, aka the best trope in existence. And yes, I realized that I'm so obsessed with the friends to lover trope because the only person I've ever loved in my life was my best friend. But we don't talk about that. Also, the whole fuckboy concept implies something that is not common in Thai BL series that seem to be more innocent and follow the Prince Charming meets Prince Charming trope most of the time, which is that here the love interest is gonna be none of that. Immediately we have that notion of flaw that comes with Kai, which spices things up because Third is in love with Kai, but also kind of hates him at the same time, the same way the viewer is supposed to feel for him as well. So the story of Theory of Love, despite being quite simple, breaks down so many barriers in terms of storytelling because it makes both main characters incredibly flawed, actually showing their two different sides of the story, but also getting the viewer overly invested in a relationship that is shown as low-key toxic for most of the show and is romantically non-existent most of the series as well. While the story is simple despite definitely standing out from usual BL shows, it's truly in the execution of the show that the writing shines, knowing when to add drama and when not to. It doesn't rely on cheap fanservice moments, instead showing how close friendship and love are to each other. In fact, for me, it's more of a friendship series than a romantic one, and it seeks before anything else to develop its characters. Which, if you've watched any of my videos, you know character development is my number one favorite thing in a series, so you might start to understand why I adore Theory of Love. Where Theory of Love stands out is most definitely through the change of point of view that occurs halfway through the show. For the first 6 episodes, the viewers have been seeing the story through Third's eyes, but they're unaware that they're looking at a biased retelling of the events, as Third is a biased narrator like all of us are. A lot of the viewers hate Kai by the time we're at episode 6. Not me though, I could never hate him. But that is completely switched when the show becomes about Kai's point of view and shows us that yes, despite being the dumbest dumbass that ever dumped, Kai is really not a bad guy at all. And that shift occurs as the story seemingly comes to an end, with Third deciding to move on as Kai finally realizes his feelings. This should be the end, but it's not. And Kai's point of view is the key to the show truly succeeding in its delivery and story completion, entirely redeeming him as a character. Which again, in my eyes, he was already perfect, but you know I'm biased. And finally unlocking the potential Kai Third have as a ship. The characters in this series are, as you might guess, my absolute favorites. They're all flawed dumbasses, which are, in my humble opinion, the best kind of characters and bring so much flavor to the show. First of all, we have my baby Kai, who is already getting his much-deserved spotlight in the rest of the video, so I'll keep it short. Kai is made to be hated and loved at the same time with his adorable mannerisms and really stupid decisions. What stands out from him is that he's actually not a bad person at all. In fact, I'd argue that Kai is characterized by his trying his best energy, which makes all of his actions, good or bad, immediately more lovable. He is the perfect love interest because he is so flawed, and he is, in my humble opinion, the definite backbone of this series. On the other side, Third is also a really good main character as he is hopelessly in love with Kai but still can see right through his flaws and bullshit. Contrarily to most love stories where the main character is blinded by love and their love interest seems perfect to them, here Third is very well aware he is clinging onto Kai, who in the first part of the show doesn't care much about him. And that very knowledge, paired with Third's sassy remarks and drama queen ways, makes for a great anchor for the viewer to relate to, and makes the love story much more interesting because of the push and pull happening with the character of Third. Two is a perfect side character as he is a great support to both Third and Kai, though everyone knows he's team Third, but he also has his own storyline going on with Lin and Pian. His personality is cheery and funny, yet he does have a more somber aspect that comes through in his love life that I find fascinating. Overall, he's probably my favorite character after Kai. Then we have Anne. Yes, sorry Bone, your time is coming soon. For a character who has so little screen time and spends half of his storyline being used as a tool to make Kai jealous of his relationship with Third, he was still given an amazing development. Anne is presented as a cold and pretentious senior who is aggressive towards Two and teases him when he gets the occasion. But he also has those moments where his facade completely breaks down and we can discover his genuine wish to be vulnerable with Two in a romantic way. And those moments are so beautiful and show a character who's devoted to love, true to his feelings, but also so good at hiding them. Now for Bone, he is pretty much a copy and paste of Two, but straight and taller. He is cheery and funny as much as a fuckboy as the other guys in the group, yet he gets his own love story where his vulnerability starts to come true, which I'm now realizing is the common theme between these 5 main characters. He's also the only one who gets a sad story, which I do think is kind of reparation for the hundreds of straight stories where the LGBTQ+ characters suffer way more than all of the others, but anyway. He still didn't deserve this. As the token straight of this series, he is truly the best character for that kind of role, lovable and hilarious. Lin is also a character that's very interesting to me because even if on the show she was almost entirely developed as Two's love interest, it's very clear that her story is about coming into her own person as a single woman. She's clearly in an unhappy relationship with Pon for most of the show, who treats her like shit, but whom she still loves deeply. When they break up, she dates Two, who's always been here for her, but she clearly doesn't have real feelings for him. Two is a rebound, one that doesn't last as she catches on with his feelings for Anne. Lin's last appearance is one of understanding of friendship with Two, but I also believe it's the start of her embracing her singlehood. In a show where almost every female character except for her was kind of a cliche and a prop for Kaiter's story, I really appreciated her character. And finally, Shane, my dyed hair baby, whom I love very much. Shane also has very little screen time, but he aces every scene he's in with his nonchalant and friendly attitude. I like his friendship with Anne, who seems way more stuck up next to him, his lie about Anne courting Third that prompts Kaiter's relationship to finally move forward, and the mentor relationship he has with Third, which is actually pretty important for Third's development as a character. He doesn't take much place in the series, yet the place he takes is really important. And finally, I want to talk about the Savage Gang as a unit, with the absolute natural way they work together as a group. I'll talk about the chemistry between the actors later, but apart from that, the 4 of them work so well together, being extremely close, yet their friendship not feeling forced for the sake of the show. They all exist outside of their friendship, making them even better together. Except for maybe Kai, who I feel is actually the more alone of the 4 and the more reliant on them, especially once he doesn't have his girlfriends to hide behind. But anyways, they also all have their friendship between each member. Kai and Third are best friends who pull apart to become lovers. Two and Third are best friends that grow closer because of the Kai situation. Two and Kai are probably the least close, but still joke around a lot, and actually in the special episode that yes, I said I wouldn't bring up, it seems as if they've grown a lot closer with time. Two and Bone are the best comedic duo on earth, basically twin brothers in terms of personality. Bone and Kai are the biggest fuckboys of the group and it has made them closer, especially at the beginning of the show. And Bone, while not very close with Third, will protect him with his life like a big brother would. Their friendship is definitely one of the selling points of this series and contributes to making them more endearing as characters. So I'm gonna be quick because I have an untwo video coming up next week exploring in more details why they are the best secondary ship ever in my humble opinion. First of all, as I said in my simulation video, it was the first time a GMMTV secondary ship actually got that much development and a confirmed relationship. So that already makes them iconic. But what makes untwo's story work so well, even as a side relationship, is that it still fits the themes of the show that Kaitor have with repressed feelings and angst, but on a much lighter level because they literally have like 20 scenes together. But a lot of other random secondary ships have the same amount of screen time, yet never have the same satisfying story. And that's because every scene between untwo is meaningful. It's not there for fan service or to fill the screen time up, but because it genuinely advances their story. And even when there's gaps in the story, like between episode 6 and episode 8, the viewer can absolutely fill the gaps themselves. They're the perfect balance of a compelling story, but not too compelling that it steals Kaitor's spotlight. Even though I gotta be honest, it still did that for me. I think there's so much chemistry to talk about for this show. First of all, of course, the one between Off and Gun, which has grown from pretty stale in Puppy Honey to absolutely incredible. The fact that they've known each other for so long completely sells Kaitor's being best friends to lovers. And there's something absolutely effortless about the way they fit together. There's no need for crazy fan service, which seems to either be missing entirely or at least toned down very much in the show, because Off Gun are just that naturally beautiful together. For untwo, I would argue their chemistry is just as good despite their lack of scenes together. First, of course, the king of hard eyes himself, Earth Pirapat, completely sells us that Anne has been in love with two for 3 years at the point of the show, and he does so naturally and beautifully. As for two, my baby disaster bisexual, as I always love them, White shows his feelings less, completely showing how in denial and confused two is. And during important moments, he absolutely slays. I think White Nawat can seem to be underacting to some people sometimes, but here he did a really good job of balancing indifference and longing. And when An and two are together, you can absolutely feel an invisible pull between them that can't really be explained. Then I won't go into details about Bone and Pan because I must admit I skipped most of their scenes. The whole teacher-student trope being one of my biggest pet peeves. Which is incredibly ironic considering my parents met because my mom was my dad's professor. And yes, that's okay because he was 25 and she was 29 and they dated well after my dad got his diploma. But from what I saw between Bone and Pan, they were pretty good together, so yeah. And finally, I want to talk about the friendship chemistry between the 4 members of the Savage Gang. Groups of male friends are very common in BL, and I would even say they're kind of all the same, but not this one. I noticed it especially when Together aired, and Tyne's group of friends felt exactly like the Savage Gang, but bland. No shade, I do like them, but I do think the ingredient that makes Kai, Turd, 2 and Bone work so well as a whole is chemistry. White has been friends with Off and Gun for years, so it was very normal that they would portray being best friends very well. Mike was much more of a newbie in comparison, yet he was cast perfectly for the role because he has a very upbeat personality that immediately fit well with the rest of the gang. This, coupled with the great writing of them as a group, leads to impeccable chemistry that sells me the friendship much more than Tyne's gang in Together in my opinion. This is definitely one of my favorite groups of friends in a Thai series, and it's mostly thanks to the chemistry. Like almost all of GMMTV's series, the acting is obviously really good. Gunn is known for being one of the best Thai actors, so I won't even go into details about it because he slayed as usual and absolutely no one was surprised. The actor who surprised everyone though, including me who became a stan because of this particular role, is Of Jumpo. And as a stan, I can recognize that Of hasn't always been given the best roles. So Kai was truly the role that finally fully showed his potential. Even though every other role in this series could have been played by other actors equally as well, Kai is the only character where you can feel he was made for Off, who manages to show his flaws as well as make his qualities stand out in a way that's so natural and barely feels like acting. The scene where he breaks down for the first time is the only time I cried during the show. Bear in mind, I cry like 5 to 10 times a year. And it just felt so much more powerful than the other emotional scenes of the show because of the build-up and emotional reservation that Off portrayed until then. And while I said the other roles were less perfectly tailored for the actors, I don't mean I could imagine any other actors in them. I've already gushed over untwo, but Earth especially stole the show with the crushing love and devotion he managed to portray in such a small amount of screen time. White's performance was also seamless, blending his funny exterior with his friends and his gloomier moments with Anne perfectly. Mike also nailed the distinction between his cheery persona and his sad romantic story. So except for the girlfriends who were sometimes slightly over the top, which was absolutely the director's choice and not the fault of the actresses, the acting was damn freaking good from everyone. The pace was near perfect in my opinion, with combining high-tension episodes with slower character-building ones. The shift of point of view halfway through the show is great because it switches things up and prevents the viewer from being bored by all of this angst. The only things I would say were a bit rushed were the period of time where Kai and Third are almost dating right before their big fight, which is only shown in the form of a montage and I wish would have been more developed because it's one of the rare moments of the show where Kai and Third are in love and not fighting. And there's also the time jump at the end of episode 12 that just kind of served no purpose except showing us that the Savage Gang owns a company together and that Kai Third and untwo are still together. And while that is good to know, I feel like it could have been implied without the time jump that was a bit weirdly placed in my opinion, and sort of cheap looking too, like most time jumps usually are in my eyes. So except for Three Will Be Free, let's be honest, GMM shows aren't really about crazy original cinematography. They're all very aesthetically pleasing with distinct color palettes and themes for each show, but the directional choices stay pretty limited most of the time with a few exceptions. I'm about to talk about it in a few minutes, but the movie theme of the show really guided the cinematographic direction of it in a great way. Theory of Love has a very natural color palette that still stands out in my opinion, with very strong settings even though they're mostly just university buildings. There's also the characters' outfits that for once really stand out and contribute to the hipster personalities of these cinema major students, and absolutely add to the cinematography and globally the world building of the series. Which if you've watched my two other video essays, you know world building is extremely important for a series to be memorable. This attention to details is very valuable because it makes the series feel more real and also shows the care put into it. Care that carried over to the special episode that contained the same clothes from the series that had been conserved more than a year and a half later. In terms of aesthetics, this show truly is one of the strongest from GMM. One of the elements that makes Theory of Love stand out from other BL series yet again is definitely its ability to have its own distinct theme, movies, and run with it. A lot of BL shows tend to have an underlying theme, most of the time being music, some with better execution than others in my opinion, but movies are not as much of an overused theme. And while the other shows focusing on music manage to make it a significant part of the show, I would argue Theory of Love's central theme is movies, because they're genuinely everywhere. From the opening credits, the sets, the title of the episodes, and actual references and reenactment of movie scenes, the show is truly an homage to movies and more precisely romantic comedies. Which is extremely interesting in itself because it's a series portraying a man-loving man relationship about rom-coms that are, most of the time, very straight. It's like a more inclusive rewriting of them, while still paying homage to this often criticized film genre, mostly for catering to women audiences, just like BL. The loop has been looped. But above that, the movie theme also fits the characters so well, because yes, they are cinema students, but more than that because it allows the show to use references to transcribe Kai and Third's feelings. Third is a character who's basically never been in a relationship and he's kind of a loner apart from the Savage Gang at first, but he adores love, especially in movies. The theme of love in movies allows him to explore something he doesn't have and so desperately wants with Kai. On the other hand, Kai is a player and has had 50 girlfriends at this point. He should technically be an expert in love, though since he breaks up with them every 2 weeks, he clearly doesn't understand love either. But Kai despises rom-coms. It's almost like he doesn't really want relationships, but to feel some kind of emptiness in his life instead. He's so inadequate at love that he forces himself to watch a bunch of rom-coms to try and understand what it really is and be able to confess to Third in a way he likes. He's the exact opposite of Third, though he comes around to loving romantic movies through his own love for Third.
เกลียดหนังรักไม่ใช่เหรอวะใช่แต่นั่นมันเมื่อก่อนเดี๋ยวนี้ชอบแล้วรักเลยด้วยรักจนหัวปักหัวปั๊มไปหมดแล้วเนี่ย
I'm starting to see a pattern with the shows in this series of videos I'm making, because risk-taking is always a big element of them. In Three Will Be Free, the risk-taking was with the dark and mature topics, and in I Told Sunset About You, the risk-taking is in the show's decision to hurt the viewer, even if it might push them away. Theory of Love definitely falls into that second category. One of the big parts of why I consider Theory of Love underrated despite its massive success is because a lot of people kinda hate the show. And I'm not saying I get it, but I do understand that this show is not for everyone. First of all, just like I Told Sunset About You, and I'm now realizing Theory of Love was kind of the blueprint for angsty BL shows, this show is angsty as hell. Like, from the first episode to the last, you mostly freaking suffer, which I understand can be a turn-off for some people. Personally, I do prefer happy and fluffy series, but when pain is warranted in a story, and especially when it's done well, it just gives me my favorite series apparently. Here the angst is totally justified and at the core of the story. The show simply wouldn't exist without it. And it's not over the top either. I mean, except when Third showers with his clothes on as he cries, but you all know he's a drama queen. Also that scene of Kai being hit by a car and waddling to Third with blood all over him. Truly the most ridiculous tie scene ever. But that just shows Theory of Love knows perfectly how to balance comedy and angst, which is actually a pretty hard thing to do. So while I understand why it might turn some people off, for me the angst is done so well and so incrementally throughout the show that is truly one of its best aspects. Sure, it doesn't make the show super rewatchable because, well, pain, but yeah, I do love good angst sometimes. The other big risk done by the show is the character of Kai, which, even though it hurts me to say that, in a way I understand why Kai would be a turn-off. He's introduced as a player, selfish, really stupid, the complete opposite of self-aware, and frankly not that good of a friend or person in general. So I do get the I want to kill Kai movement, but also I don't. And you can't call me biased for this one because when I started the show I didn't care about Ovjumpo or Kai, not in the way I do today. I honestly expected to hate Kai from the get-go, but something kept me from it. Because even though Kai truly is the dumbest of assholes, from the get-go he is presented as, well, adorable. There's something truly special about him because you hate him, but you also want to protect him at all costs. Kai to me reads as a lost soul who truly hasn't found his purpose in life, so he's browsing through things without any care, be it in love, friendship, or even his studies. But Kai is never cruel, on purpose at least. He does some very questionable stuff that probably should have been changed, but yeah. The more the show unfolds, the more we discover how much of a cutie he truly is. First of all, him crushing on Third is the most adorable thing on earth, but also there's so many clues of Kai caring about things a little deeper than he lets on. Notably with the fact that he's the one who wants to create a production company with the Savage Gang. He's the one thinking about the future with his best friends, staying together as a team. And I'm gonna be honest, I'm not sure the others would have offered the same idea. Kai is a risk because he's not the smooth, perfect Prince Charming most of the BL love interests are. He's not Sarawat, he's not Dean, he's not Kong Bop, he's not Mork. Not that there's anything wrong with those characters. But Kai feels real, in all of his flaws and punchable stupidity. He might have pushed many away from the show, but he certainly didn't push me. Okay, editing Axel, I also forgot to say that this soundtrack is a bop. Fake Protagonist by Getz and Nova is hands down one of the best BL songs ever. To conclude, Theory of Love is a flawed but incredible series. It managed to capture my heart in ways not many series have, and in a way that changed the course of my love for Thai series forever. And it's also the reason I'm an Ovjumpo stan, so like iconic across the board. In a way, even though it's way less perfect than a show like I Told Sunset About You, I just love it as much, if not more. This series truly means so much to me on every level, and it's for me the most iconic Thai BL that follows the classic tropes tropes and ways of being executed, while also challenging both at the same time. Mostly what I hope I achieved with this video is to make at least one person who gave up on this show reconsider watching it. I hope I succeeded. I'll see you very soon and have a great day.